nights we had shared since our day on the beach, Molly had refused to discuss celerity with me any further.
I am learning to love books again. If anyone asked me before if I was an avid reader, if I read books, I was probably the first to put my hand up and say, no, I do not read books. Which is strange because when I was younger and growing up, I used to believe I loved books. I, remember sort of getting a lot of fantasy books as a kid for birthday gifts, and I would read all different kinds of books. I remember one book that I got from my parents was, I forgot the exact book name, but the series was called The Ranger's Apprentice, which is like this young kid fantasy book, which is probably my first introduction into fantasy series, book series. And I remember reading it and telling my parents I loved that book. And for my 9th or 10th birthday, I remember they gave me the huge box set of that series, which was around 10 plus books. I forgot exactly how many, but I remember being so incredibly happy and so grateful to have gotten that box set because, at the time I thought I loved it. I loved reading. Did I read the books in that? No, I don't think I touched any other book except the first one. And did I even finish the first one? I don't recall ever getting through that book. So it was sort of a weird relationship with books at the time. I did read at school the Spiderwick Chronicles, which technically I didn't read it. It was more my teacher. The teacher would read it to the whole class. It's sort of like a reading time every day. So we got through probably the whole series of the Spiderwick Chronicles. And I remember loving that. The book series that I did love as a kid was, funnily enough, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I think it was around only 5 or 6 books. But I remember reading through it, loving it. It was a very easy read. I found it very hilarious and funny. There was pictures in it as well, so I guess that helped. And I remember as well, I got the newest book. I forgot which one it was, the purple one. I got the book when it came out. It took 3 hours to read the whole thing. And I remember at the time thinking, wow, I love books. And, this is who I am. I'm a big book reader. But I never really kept it going. I think when I grew up, I sort of transitioned away from novels and books and more into my love and obsession with video games. Just a bit of context, I loved video games, but growing up, I didn't really play a lot of video games. But that was because of a strict rule that my parents enforced where we could only play around 2 hours of video games a day, only during school holidays, which is basically 4 separate school holiday periods and only playing 2 hours of video games a day. That's what we were restricted to. During school days, we were not allowed video games. So obviously my time was probably taken, reading books if I did. So when I had a bit more freedom to play video games, that's when my love for video games came out. Playing Animal Crossing Wild World from morning to night. When I got a bit older, I got into The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, which changed my life. I played that game obsessively for many years. And I played Witcher 3. I could go on all and all about video games. That is not the point of this video. But there was probably a huge, probably big period of my life where I was then, no, I'm not a reader. I am a person who plays video games. The video games I played was very much around that genre of fantasy. Role-playing games, open world games set in sort of a fantasy period. That was my obsession. That was my hyperfixation. Just fantasy. Played the odd sort of non-fantasy game here and there, but I would safely say that was my big interest. And when it came to reading books, I don't think I touched a book during that whole time because my sort of focus around my free time was to play video games as much as possible. One of the big series that I got into was the Assassin's Creed series. And to be honest, I got into Assassin's Creed when I was a little too young. I'd say I was around 10, 11 years old. But I played the first Assassin's Creed and the second Assassin's Creed game, and I fell in love with the series. I think just the fact that it blended both historical and also just normal fantasy was amazing. And so naturally, when I would tell my parents that I loved Assassin's Creed, they ended up getting me the Assassin's Creed books. And at the time, there was probably only 2 or 3 out and written by an author. I believe it was the first Assassin's Creed novel, The Secret Crusade, and then there was the Assassin's Creed 2 novelization. So I got both of those, and I remember reading those books and loving it. I think I got the most into Secret Crusade. I probably finished 70 to 80% of that book. I never finished it though. And Assassin's Creed 2, I probably got around 40 to 50% of that book. I don't really remember. But that's sort of the books I would get, and I would want to buy. My mom or my dad would send me photos of, do you want this book? And it was always an Assassin's Creed novelization. I'd be like, yes, I want that book. So that was another foray into reading at the time, but that didn't last. Especially, when you have related texts at school. I never read those texts, to be honest with you. I would read the summaries online, but did I physically pick up that book and read through the pages? Very, very rarely. So fast forward a few years ago, I'd say it was only 2 years ago, I was playing a video game series that I was very, very, very obsessed with, called the Dragon Age series, which is a very well-known, popular series. I really liked the game, but I wanted to sort of delve into the Dragon Age series again. I kind of became super hyper fixated on the series. And when I get hyper fixated on something, especially when it's a game or a fantasy world, I read up on all the things on the wikis. I listen to podcasts about it, watch YouTube videos. Just consumes a lot of my free time just in this world. And when I got into Dragon Age series, I started playing the original games. And then there was a moment where I had a holiday to the Philippines with my family, and I didn't bring my PC with me, so I couldn't play Dragon Age. So to scratch that itch, I was looking at other things around Dragon Age, like what can I do? And I found the Dragon Age series actually had a couple of in-universe novels that was written, well, a few of them are written by David Gator, which was the actual sort of main story writer for the video game series. He wrote a few novels set in the same universe. So the first one was called Dragon Age: The Stolen Throne, which, I think I was just so hyper fixated and hyper invested into this Dragon Age world that I thought to myself, I am going to read this book while I'm in the Philippines, because I was itching to play the game, that I needed something to satiate that fix, to get my Dragon Age fix, essentially. So I went and got the Kindle version on my iPad of Dragon Age: The Stolen Throne, and during my free time in the Philippines, I would read that book. And let me tell you, that was my first experience back into reading in a very, very long time, and I really, really enjoyed it. I read that book in a week, which I think it was only around 300 or 400 pages. It was not a long book, but I enjoyed it a lot, and I would use up a lot of my free time reading that book. That was my first foray back into book reading, and I really, really loved it. So I loved reading that book, and I felt really, really accomplished finishing The Stolen Throne. It was the first book that I finished since Diary of a Wimpy Kid back in like 2010 or something. So I just still wanted that feeling of, like, I was chasing that feeling of, I need to read another book. I need to find another story that I can finish, because I was still in the Philippines, still had a lot of free time on my hands. So what I decided to do instead was to buy the sequel of The Stolen Throne, which was called The Calling, I believe. And I felt with the second book, because I had finished The Stolen Throne, I had a little bit of some higher expectations. Felt like The Calling just wasn't doing it for me, and I've probably read the first chapter or so, and I just kind of didn't feel like picking it up again. But gratefully, my sort of interest and want to continue reading was still with me, and that motivated me to then start to look at videos and reading articles of, like, what is one of the best book fantasy series there are to read for a beginner like me. And it came up with a whole bunch of different recommendations. I watched a ton of videos from different kind of YouTubers who had their own sort of opinions, and I ended up settling for a book that I adore called Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. We'll say it took me a bit to get through this book. It is a big book. I mean, for, I guess, someone who's not used to reading or not reading a lot of books, this took me around, I'd say, 3 months to finish. But let me tell you, I really love this book. And this kind of solidified for me that there is a whole world that I'm missing out on by not reading books. So before I even finished the first Mistborn book, I was so motivated to read the rest of the trilogy just because I was loving it so much. I walked into the bookstore and went straight to the fantasy section, looked for The Well of Ascension, which is the sequel to Mistborn, and I had this feeling inside where I'm like, I need this book now. And it gave me so much joy to pick that book from the shelf, buy it for myself, and having it in my hands to say, I'm going to read this as soon as I finish Mistborn. And I feel like that's something that I've always, I won't say struggled with, but whenever I get into a hobby or a very big interest, I like to then buy that hobby and interest. As an example, during COVID, I started getting really invested in the idea of Dungeons and Dragons. We were watching a lot of videos and people playing the game, just being able to play in a fantasy setting with your friends, and this whole freedom of creating a story with each other and playing this role-playing game just gave me a lot of, I just was really invested in that idea that I ended up buying Dungeons and Dragons, the handbook. This is the newer handbook. I bought the old one back then. So I bought the handbook, the monster manual, a bunch of dice, the starter set, spent a lot of money on it. And we never played Dungeons and Dragons. The first time I played Dungeons and Dragons was last year with my family. And we're still playing that game now. But just to give a bit of context about me, it took us four years before I started playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I had all the stuff during that time. When I get into something, I just feel that, not the need, but I have that burning desire in myself to then buy a bunch of stuff around that hobby and interest. So that's just a little preface about what's to come, because essentially I bought The Well of Ascension before I finished Mistborn, got into The Well of Ascension, loved that book as well, read through it as quickly as I could with my reading skill at the time. It came to my birthday. I was about to finish Well of Ascension. It's my birthday last year. I was sharing to all my family, my friends, my wife, how much I loved Mistborn and Brandon Sanderson, and reading. I was picking it up again. I was loving reading. So my mom, for my birthday, ended up gifting me this box set, which is sort of echoing what she did for me when I was 10 or 11 years old, when she bought me that box set for The Ranger's Apprentice. She got me the box set for the Wax and Wane series, the second era of Mistborn. And I was so stoked. I was like, yes, thank goodness I have these 4 books for myself. I was so happy. So I got these 4. You can see it's still in the wrapping. That's a little bit of foreshadowing of where I'm at. I got that. And then my auntie got me this book, The Way of Kings. And yes, I've always been meaning to read this book. It is on my list to read, and so she knew that, and she got this for me, so that's also there now. So I started getting a bunch of books just as gifts. During that time as well, for myself, I went into the bookstore again, and this is now where I love going to bookstores. I just love browsing, and then ended up buying Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. I heard this was one of his best ones. I mean, I heard all of them are really good, but I think this is the story that really captured me just from reading a little bit of a synopsis. So I got this for myself. I guess you can see where this is going. I started getting a backlog of books. This was a gift from me. This book and A Clash of Kings. This was gifted to me by my wife when we first started dating, because I told her I love fantasy and I really wanted to get back into reading. So this is all the way like 8 years ago. And she gave me these 2 books very kindly, and very sweet of her to give me these 2 books. And I didn't read it, to my shame. The Witcher, because I loved the video game. I thought the TV show was okay. So I started reading The Hero of Ages, and I probably got through the first sort of 25% of the book. And I'm going to be honest, to me, it was a little slow. And Not to say that it was not good. I just think I expected to be a little bit more invested, maybe because I was feeling a little bit of burnout from being someone who hadn't read a lot of books before to now reading two in what, 6 months, which is, I know, not a lot, but still, I think I didn't give myself enough break in between maybe Brandon Sanderson books or just reading in general, and kind of was on this role of reading a lot, and then suddenly by the first quarter of this book I got a little bit burnt out because I just wasn't invested in it. I ended up just putting it to the side. A lot of things happened last year, I think personally as well, where I got really overwhelmed with a bunch of things. I won't blame it, but it contributed to me sort of losing motivation to do fun things like reading. So I put this book down and had it on my desk at that quarter page mark, and I had it there for around almost a year. I had a bunch of other stuff going on as well, planning a wedding, a honeymoon, all that cool things. But this book was on my desk, and I tried picking it up here and there, reading through, but again, I think it just wasn't picking up as quickly as I would have liked it to. And so every single time I would probably read a chapter and then wouldn't pick it up for another few months. So I would look at my backlog of books, and I had no motivation to go through any of them. And here comes my other main problem, which I think is a personal problem. I am very stubborn, or I'm a completionist, I think is a better way to say it. If I'm reading this book and I'm a quarter way through, I refuse to then go and read a different book and start a new book. There's something in me, the completionist in me, that says I cannot start a new book until I finish the book I'm on, which to my detriment caused me to not read or progress a lot in my reading for almost a year. This is the same with video games. If I'm playing a video game, I'm not really 100% enjoying it, and then I get a new game that I really want to play, that game is on my backlog until I finish the one I'm on. That's just happened. That's just how I've been for my whole life, I'd say, how I am with my hobbies and all different kinds of things. And yeah, it's to my detriment, I suppose. So I was stuck on the Hero of Ages for a long time. I got married in January this year, went on a honeymoon, so I was overseas. I brought Mistborn with me. I also brought another book, which it's in my other bag, and I'm kind of, to be honest, a bit lazy to get it. I got this book sometime last year. I forgot when, but I remember reading, I think it was around the time when I was tossing up, do I want to continue reading Hero of Ages or should I pick up a new book? I got Malazan, Book of the Fallen. This is a book I remember seeing a lot of opinion online. I heard it's really hard to get into, but I took that as a challenge. I got the book. I read the prologue. I haven't picked it up since. I think it's super interesting. I do want to read that as well. It's on my backlog. So I brought Malazan with me, as well as the Hero of Ages, on my honeymoon. And when we had some downtime, relaxing, I'd pull out Hero of Ages. And I read a bunch on my honeymoon, when appropriate. I came back home and I finished this book within 2-3 weeks. This book is so freaking good, and I really regret not finishing it sooner, because wow, I can write a whole video about the Mistborn trilogy and this book, but this book was so good, and the ending was wow. I could not give it any more praise. I love this book, even though it did admittedly have a bit of a slow start for me. The rest of the book was amazing. So I finished that book. Bit of context. So around the time when I was still, not picking up the Hero of Ages, I still went to bookstores because they gave me a lot of joy, and I bought a bunch of different books. So one of them was Malazan, Book of the Fallen. I also bought this book, The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, the first book of the Farseer Trilogy. This was on, again, my backlog. And after I finished Hero of Ages, I probably gave myself a day or so break. But I was really, really excited because this was now opening up my possibilities of books that I could finally go through my backlog and read something new, which I was super excited for. I got The Assassin's Apprentice because I've heard there's many different authors out there with a much better writing style, or a style that's more engaging to certain readers. And one of them was Robin Hobb. So that was probably one of the main reasons I got this book. But I also heard that this book is very depressing, very sad. It is a very tragic story, or it really delves into sort of very tragic elements. That intrigued me, I'll admit, and it made me want to read the book even more. I read the first 2 chapters and I was not immediately hooked. I felt a little bored. It felt a bit slow, even though I know it was the first few chapters, but I think I just felt a little slow. So I was a bit bummed, to be honest with you, and kind of put it down and said, okay, maybe not this book. But the completionist side of me came out again, and something told me I needed to read this book all the way through. Then I came up with a brilliant idea. What if I read this book physically on the paperback version, and then on my commute to work, which now takes around an hour or so, both an hour one way, so 2 hours in total of my day, 3 times a week, what if I use that commute time to listen to the Assassin's Apprentice audiobook? I started doing that. I thought it was a brilliant idea. I thought it was a great way to spend my commute time and potentially get further into Assassin's Apprentice to the point where maybe I can find it interesting. I got through the first few chapters of Assassin's Apprentice on audiobook and became so engrossed in that story to the point where I ended up putting Knights of the Seven Kingdoms down and picked up Assassin's Apprentice again and finished it all the way through within 2 weeks. That was the best idea I've ever had. I finished this book. I love this book. It is different to the Mistborn series. It is slower, so much more focused, but wow, like I was incredibly invested in this book and the story and the characters. I can talk on and on about this book. I love this book so much. I finished it last week or so. And so last Sunday, so just the most recent weekend, I went to the bookstore with my wife and I got the sequel, Royal Assassin. And I will say within 5 days of reading that book, read quite a bit in at the cafe there, and then I've been reading a lot and listening to the audiobook. Same procedure. I am now halfway through the book, which is probably the fastest I've gotten through a book ever, I would say. I love this book. I love the Farseer trilogy so far. I love Robin Hobb's writing. I get the criticisms around that it's slow, it's quite sad and tragic, all those different things, but wow, what a beautiful story. The way she writes her characters and their development, and just learning about them and their experiences, and wow, like I am very invested. I am hyper fixated on this series. I am reading as much as I can so that I can get onto Assassin's Quest, so I can get onto the 3rd book of this trilogy and finish the trilogy off. But I am loving this book so far. And I'm just, when I reflect, I'm like, wow, I should have done that before. And when I was stuck on the Hero of Ages, when I found it, really slow and I didn't pick up that book, I should have used my commute time and free time just listening to the audiobook, because I think that would have gotten me through that a lot quicker. And that's what I'm going to continue doing moving forward now as a way to read my books. I think that just helps with my, me maintaining my motivation and consistency, because, I'm juggling a lot of different things. So being able to listen to the audiobook on a drive, reading this on my free time, and still having enough time to do other stuff like playing video games, for example. I am loving this routine right now. It's helping me with my my books, and getting through my backlog of books, and just going through all these things. So that's what I learned. I went to the bookstore. I've been loving going to the bookstore now. It's like my happy, safe place. And I just love the community around reading books. This hobby has become so special to me. I look forward to going to the bookstore. My wife loves reading books. She reads books much faster than I do, and she inspires me also to continue reading. So that's, really grateful for her, and it's something special that we can share together, because we love now going on the weekends together to the bookstore, just browsing books, but then also going to the cafe to then just spend some quality time together, and then spend some time reading books in our own time at the cafe with a nice coffee and some snacks. It is the best. And I know, you maybe can take away from this video that I'm just someone who just impulse buys stuff that I'm interested in, which is true. But I ended up also buying the blade itself. I've heard amazing things about this book, so I just could not help myself but buy it. I'm really trying to stop. I'm really trying to stop increasing my backlog, but I really couldn't help it. So I got this book. I can't wait to read this. So my plan is to finish the Farseer trilogy, then take a break from the Realm of the Elderlings before I jump into the Life Ship Traders trilogy. I'm going to read the Farseer trilogy, then read the Blade itself, see how I feel, and then maybe read the rest of this trilogy if I'm really, really into it. If not, I'll at least try and finish this book and then get into the Life Ship Traders, and then work my way through my backlog. And I do want to read either Yumi the Nightmare Painter next, or The Way of Kings, but I don't know if I'm ready for The Way of Kings yet. But I have a huge, massive backlog still, and I think that is half the reason why I wanted to make this channel. There's something, the book community, the booktube community is amazing and so cozy, and everyone seems so genuinely passionate about books, and I just want to kind of share my story, but then also a little bit of sharing my journey of reading, and hopefully as I get through my backlog of books and any ideas and stuff that I have, that I also want to share that as sort of a way to keep myself accountable to read, because it brings me a lot of joy. And with everything outside of my hobbies, with work and all these different things that might cause me some stress, just the joy of books and the joy of reading is fulfilling me in a way that I feel productive as well when doing my hobbies, which I love. So yeah, that's part of the reason why I want to create this channel. Hopefully we'll be making some sort of chill videos where I share my journey, share what books I'm reading and my thoughts on them and all those different things. But yeah, hope you enjoy this video. I think honestly, as I'm making this video, as I'm talking through it, I'm not really sure what this video is about. It might be, after I edit it, it might still come across as very incoherent and just completely messy, and a bunch of thoughts just kind of splat on a video, but hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. So yeah, hopefully talk again soon. See ya.